For today, right now, the session is on design and architecture, and your moderator for the day is going to be Zafri. Zafri is a graduate architect, LAM Part 2, and currently working at NR Architect, and he has completed his bachelor's in architecture as well as master's in architecture in UiTM. So I'll pass the floor to Zafri. Take it away. Thank you.
Hi everybody. My name is Zafri and Zamri, as introduced by Harin earlier. I'm very honored to be approached as a moderator for this amazing program by BIMBING. So before I start introducing the panels, just a brief rundown about our day. So it's a 45-minute talk with 15 minutes Q&A session, totaling up to an hour. And in the 45 minutes, the audience can start asking questions in the chat box panel. It could be a general question, or it could be a question directed specifically to a speaker. And in the last 50 minutes, we'll try to answer as much questions as we can. So without further ado, let me just introduce everybody to our esteemed panels. First, we have Deepan Raj, who is the CEO and chairman of Sky Home Solutions. He got his BSc Honours Architectural Design from City University, Malaysia. Next, we have Vishal Jay Singh. He's a project architect at MJ Kani Architect. He received his Bachelor of Applied Science degree from LICT in partnership with Curtin University, and subsequently received his Bachelor of Architecture degree from IUKL, previously teaching architectural theory and history at First City University College. And he also actively engages in publishing articles online. Lastly, but not least, Vivian Cheng. She's a life missions consultant. Previously, she was a project developer manager for reforestation and environmental sustainability designer with former experience in the field of architecture and sustainability. She was awarded the 100 Future Global Leader Scholars by Web Summit 2014 and Sustainable Development Plenary Speaker by One Young World Summit also in 2014 for her strengths in transmuting opportunities out of adversities and creating interdisciplinary linkages. She is here to support game changers to restructure the system itself. So I welcome all the speakers to our webinar. Now that the audience know who are our panelists today, let's start right on to the questions, shall we?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, firstly, what should aspirers know before embarking for a career in this field? What can they expect during their studying years? This is an open question to the panels. Anyone want to start first?
What should people expect before they decide to go into architecture? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, correct.
I think I'll take the first question. I mean, there's no doubt that architecture can be a very exciting field. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the things you learn, the things you pick up, you start going for seminars and conferences and things like that. There's so many interesting ideas around the world. But as interesting as all that is, there's also a practical side to design. So my advice is that as excited as you are about how interesting design can get, don't forget the practical side of design as well. Understanding bylaw regulations, understanding there are certain issues that you have to follow by law. You cannot simply do something just because you think it's cool and things like that. So by all means, you can try to practice as much creativity as possible, but also make sure that you pay enough attention to the requirements by law that allow these buildings to be compliant and to be safe to begin with. That's, at the moment, that's my first straightforward answer.
Before pursuing into architecture, do you have any idea what it led you to?
Before pursuing into architecture, what, sorry?
Before you actually applied into architecture, did you have any idea what architecture itself is all about?
No, I mean, when I was very young, when I was 12, I used to just enjoy going around my neighborhood to draw houses.
Yeah.
You know, there was some, I thought some houses were quite nice, some were not, quite boring or whatever, but there were some actually I thought was quite nice. So that part of the reason why I decided I would like to go into architecture.
I went into architecture because at that time when I was young, there was this career thing at Taylor's University. where you get to go in and experience like some creativity and art and stuff like that. And at that point of time, I was looking at all the options and I was deciding between engineering and architecture. I'm so glad I did not go into engineering because I was so good at architecture when I was young, right? Yeah. And because I was so good at art when I was young, and then I went into architecture and I found that it was a blessing. But after that, after I graduated, I went on a whirlwind trip in my lifetime with architecture as well. And then it evolved into sustainable design, engineering, and then it evolved into reforestation. So I would believe that architecture was the baseline for me to be able to imagine a whole new reality that I want to create for myself. Even if it wasn't just buildings, it was actually more than that. It was recreating a whole built environment, including environment, botany, ethnobotany, and also engineering. So it's been a very beautiful journey for me.
Yeah, I agree.
In my case, I chose architecture is because after SPM, I was a bit puzzled. I didn't know what to do. And then from my family and friends, they all suggested me, why don't you try architecture? And then I used to like buildings and how it's being constructed. I used to look at all this and get inspired by that. So after I entered architecture, I started exploring more stuff like more in depth. What is design all about? How can you put your creativity into, and things like that. So as time passed by, I felt all this is very interesting to me and I started enjoying doing architecture.
Yeah, I guess that's how it started for most of us. Once that interest in the in our youth, whether we like to draw or whether we like to start, just looking at the built environment. I guess that's how it usually starts for most of us.
Yeah.
Could any one of you imagine yourself doing anything else?
No.
Well, I'm doing so many things else actually, so a lot more.
Could you imagine not doing architecture and?
No.
Yeah.
A straightforward answer. I don't mind doing other things in my life, but I'm not giving up design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good insight into everybody's background.
Yeah, straightforward answers,
Okay,
man. That's the best.
Yeah. Going to the second question. Now that you've been in the industry, what were the things that architecture schools did not prepare you? Has it been as glamorous as it is depicted in the movie screens?
Can you please tell me which particular movie shows architects as a glamorous life? I'd like to see one movie.
Okay, my take is on this would be the actress Ellen Page in the movie Inception. I mean, she was portrayed as
as a student, yes.
That movie.
Oh, okay.
Time to help out. Yeah, I was just wondering.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Sorry, the question is, what is it that it doesn't prepare? Is it that you feel doesn't prepare you once you start?
Prepare you for the real world.
Okay, well, architecture being a 5-year course, it's a long course, right? I think the first 2-3 years to just think about creativity and all that is fine. But the 4th and 5th year, I think there should be more practical emphasis on the legal requirements of how a building should be built, or if you're doing a built environment, there be planning principles or anything to do with all our local jabatan, all the local authorities. Like, for instance, if you're doing something under KL, it goes to BKL, you need to be very familiar with what the requirements are to be submitted to government agencies, for instance, to fire department if you're doing a commercial building. I think there has to be a lot more emphasis in the practical side of design rather than just people focusing on the creative side. And I love the creative side, don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful field. But at the end of the day, it has to be balanced out with the practical side and legal side as well, which I think, to be honest, is a bit lacking.
I think for architecture, for me, was what I made of it. Like I told when I was 21 and I graduated from a diploma, I was like, what am I going to do with this diploma, right? And so the first thing I went into was I worked in the most expensive resorts and hotels design company in the world. And it was like amazing career there, because you really get to extend and reimagine how big architecture is beyond your understanding. You are recreating islands, you are creating townships, you know, it is that big and is that beautiful because of the money that goes into it, because they are all very big resorts. And then I went to film set design, Hollywood film set design. I did that as well. And I was building sets on site for a Scandinavian company. And then I went into what was the third one? The most meaningful architecture projects in the world. I went into the forest and I created different types of architecture to become a catalyst to help to support the rainforest ecosystem. So, and the fourth one I did was space technological habitats. I look into spacecrafts. So basically, you can see how I can diversify a simple diploma and then try to branch it to so many beautiful things. And also taking my degree with so much of emphasis, because we think that we go to university and it's boring, it's not fun and whatever. But actually it's when you have experienced life and experienced architecture, and when you go back to university, that's when you're really, really playing and having a lot of fun. That's when you're supported by fellows of Royal Society in what you do, because you are doing things that are enjoyable and fun. So yeah, that is my take on architecture.
Mine, right after I left my uni, I went for my internship. So I worked with this company called PCL Architects. So I worked with them for 4 months, and I actually got to know a lot of things, which is very different than what I studied. For example, like when it comes to realty, things are like totally different in terms of designing, and you have to take costing into account and things like this. So this kind of things all taught me a lot of, gave me a lot of knowledge about realty actually. But right after my internship, I didn't really had a good experience in my working experience actually. I didn't really had a good experience. So what I started doing, I started doing freelance work like drafting and doing minor 3D designs and all that. And after that, slowly I started doing interior design stuff for houses, like for example, curtain, blinds, and things like that. After that, I slowly moved, I started doing house renovations and started using the knowledge that I have in architecture into that. I implement my designs, my ideas into that, and started doing and going out from there onwards.
Okay. The next question is that with the pandemic going on for more than a year now, and with unemployment rate spiking, what is the critical skill set that architecture students would need to hone to be resilient in these challenging times?
Well, that's a tough one. I guess at the moment, the best thing you should do is just focus on your technical drawing skills. That is going to be very important, you know, how to do proper detailing, how to prepare submission drawings and things like that. And because at the moment, the situation is quite unpredictable. You know, sometimes when they have government announcements, sites to get locked down. And when they get locked down, you can't actually go to the site. There are no meetings, and for instance, with the contractors or your client or whatever. So it gets very difficult for work to start moving. So I think we should use this extra time right now to just brush up your skills in terms of, for instance, again, legal requirements and technical drawings. You know, and then of course we will slowly, steadily, hopefully we'll get out of this nightmare once and for all. But with all this extra free time, I think it's a good chance to take the opportunity to develop whatever skills that you have in terms of either computer 3D software or anything of that nature, or actually drawing and sketching again, so that you don't lose whatever talent you already have in all the experience that you've gained in drawing.
I think that architects, because if you see what's happening now after the pandemic, you can see that a lot of buildings are actually not relevant anymore, like offices, like shopping malls. So I think we have to be very careful as an architect, because the architect is the visionary, we're envisioning the new future. If we are not here to envision the new future, then what are we doing, right? Are we still going to be creating more office buildings that are not needed and more shopping malls that are not needed? So I think what the thing that an architect can hold on to is how to move with the times, how to integrate our social issues with architecture. How do we build buildings that are now helping us to work better? For example, if we are working from our homes already, how are we going to design our homes to have more working spaces, for example? How are we going to design buildings that are more environmental friendly? How are we going to design buildings that merge with the ecosystem landscapes? How are we going to bring the ecosystem back into the city? So because it's simple, we are at home now. There's nothing we can do. So what is it that we truly need the house? We need to be outside with nature. So if we have a building that does not have nature outside, we know what we are suffering from right now. If you are living in a building which has poor living conditions, we now understand because we are in that situation now. So it's about learning to bring all kinds of social issues back into architecture and having a new way of thinking about how architecture is going to be in this future. So yeah, I think that's one of the more important things that an architect can think about.
Yeah, I kind of really agree with that actually.
Like what Mr. Vishal said, I think that is fair enough. We really have to brush up our drafting skills. Like as soon as you graduate from your architecture school, the first thing you'll be doing is drafting, basically drafting, learning more on technical drawings and all that. So that is something very important. And if you have a good skill in drafting, means you can even do freelance work and you can some or other make some kind of money. And one more thing, when it comes to students, architecture students, the biggest problem when you're studying is idea and concept. Every building we design, we need to have a function for it. Like what just Vivian said, like now most of the buildings are irrelevant and all that. So people should like carefully consider on what are they designing and be more focused on things like that. Yeah.
Would you consider networking a skill set that's important?
Oh, yes.
Especially for Vivian, with your experiences, would you think you would be able to get into all these opportunities without having to network?
I think I've been to so many conferences in my lifetime that it's not even funny.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think it's also important that some of the soft skills such as networking is quite important for the architecture students to actually, especially with this unemployment rate. It would be great if you can get to start networking while they were studying, right? Is that okay?
Well, oh, sorry.
I would say that from my experience, I'm telling you that every single amazing job comes from somewhere which is of an amazing person. So let's say my first job, which is 7-star resorts and hotels, was actually recommended by my lecturer. And then me getting a scholarship from St. Andrews, for example, is recommended because I was supported by a fellow of Royal Society. So I took the opportunities in university just as seriously as I take it at work. Every single opportunity in life, every single relationship, if you're able to build a good relationship with that opportunity, you're already helping your future. It does not even need, sometimes you don't even need to go conferences. Conferences are something like, I go there and I meet amazing people around the world. I'm now connected globally to all these amazing change makers around the world. Yes. But my local opportunities was me that I built a good reputation with everyone I work with. That's just what it is.
So you were saying just now?
You're referring to no. Okay.
See something just now.
No, I mean, I don't think people can underestimate just how important networking is. And networking isn't just going for things which are connected directly to your own industry. So if you want to go for conferences and seminars and workshops, yes, please, by all means, go and meet all these people and do as much as you can and learn as much as you can. But it's also very, very important to meet people outside of your industry. you know. And if you want to go for, like, for instance, a show at KLPAC, you know, you do tend to meet interesting people. One thing tends to lead to another, and if they feel they need your services, they will actually keep you in mind. And over time, there's a good chance something might happen. But the really, really important thing is this, you know, don't just stick within your own industry. Go out and meet as many people as you possibly can. So let's say, for instance, there was a Bitcoin conference happening sometime next year. Go and see, go and find out what it's all about. Talk to the people, get involved in all that. If it works in your architectural industry, that's great. But at least you've gone, you've made your contacts, you've learned something new, and you keep on doing that with everything else that comes your way.
Okay. We move on to the next question. The age of internet and social media has resulted in an unprecedented availability of architectural knowledge, saying that the general public will easily access this knowledge. As such, we see businesses springing up offering services without proper qualifications. What is your take on this issue and how professionals can address it?
Sorry, professional qualification. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I mean, the general public could easily access to architectural knowledge, and they are trying to commercialize that and provide architectural knowledge and architectural services without having a background in said profession.
Well, I mean, people just need to understand that you just have to be careful who is exactly your appointee for anything of that nature. You know, at the end of the day, there's just too many for maybe one person to control. So, you know, people have to just be careful. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, for instance, if you're sick, you wouldn't want to go to a doctor that is unlicensed, kan? So you actually have to make sure that the clinic that you go to, yes, it's a proper practice. Yes, the guy knows what he's talking about. He's qualified by law. He's got a license and so forth. So I think that pretty much is something we can apply throughout the entire industry and not just any specific industry.
I think to you know, from that, a lot of people when they are you know, in nowadays when we are learning about things, it is so diversified that you can learn it in many ways. You can now download books from the internet and learn about architecture. So I think we have to learn to embrace what is coming for us, whether we like it or not. At some point as an architect, you will learn about engineering, you learn about environments as well. It does not mean you are learning already. And then at some point of the journey, you might not be qualified in it, but you're already giving consultations on it. Like I was an environmental sustainability design consultant for 5 years, even though I was not trained in it. The people that hired me was, in every sense, they had this kind of knowledge. But when they brought me in, they know that I could be trained up for that knowledge. And they wanted me in because I had the background in architecture. So I think, like it or not, we have a very fast revolution of knowledge intake right now. You know, you could not have a certificate in education, but you're teaching as a lecturer, even if you are a master's in architecture, right? But it does not mean that you're any good at teaching. It could mean that, you know, you just have the right skills at that point of time and the right understanding at that point of time to give your knowledge. And people appreciate your knowledge, right? But I think what we have to understand that even if you look at traditional architecture, it's already evolving beyond our own syllabus in the architecture university. When we learn about traditional methods, now the whole architecture scene is a digital environment with environmental connections already. Does it mean that now the syllabus is outdated? What's going to happen, right? We don't know. So I think, yes, there is that point where we are protecting our profession. That is correct. But there's another point where things are really moving really fast right now. like I think nowadays architects are not just architects, they are actually technologists. You're moving from AutoCAD, you're moving towards 3ds Max, you're moving towards Revit. You're forever becoming a technologist in a sense. But does that mean that you learn that in architecture school? Not necessarily. So this is just what it is.
Yeah, I like the fact that you say that we should embrace it, because times are changing and information comes very readily and very fast to everyone. What's your take on this, Deepan? I want to know what's the Deepan's opinion, because since you have your own construction company, how do you set yourself apart from people with the same construction company but doesn't have a construction background per se?
Sorry, can you repeat the last part? I didn't get it.
How do you set yourself apart from other construction companies or ID companies for that matter that doesn't have a background in ID, construction, or architecture itself?
I see. Okay. So basically, in my case, whenever I meet a client, the first thing they will look where am I. So when they get to know that I have architecture background, they'll confidently hand over the project to me. So this is how I convince my clients and all. And talking about the knowledge that anyone can have knowledge about architecture and all. Okay, fine. But they need to understand, is that the correct thing? Are they going to do or not? Like, I give you an example. My clients sometimes ask me, I want to extend my bedrooms at the back. I want to extend my kitchen at the back. So I will say, okay, if you want to do in that case, means there has to be a column right here in the middle. And they will be like, no, you don't have to put it here. Why don't we put it in the side and all that? You see, they just don't understand how does it work. Yeah. Things like that. So yeah, you can read from elsewhere and gain a lot of knowledge and all that, but you won't be able to understand whether the thing is really practical or not.
I'd just like to add, I have no problem with people sharing knowledge. I have no problem with people developing their understanding and their skill set in one particular field of design, and then become more and more proficient in something else. I don't have an issue with that. My concern is like what, for instance, he was talking about the guy who wants to extend the kitchen at the back of his house, right? The column and all that. You see, there are people out there, they're offering architectural services that are not qualified by law, that are doing these things to begin with, you know. Now, the problem is this: if you get them involved because they're cheaper or they're easier or blah, 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 if there are problems later on, who is going to take the liability? And these people are not qualified in the sense that they are not also familiar with the legal requirements of what can be done and what cannot be done. And of course, it's a long story, you know, like for instance, we had something called the CF a long time ago, but now we have something called Certificate of Compliance and Completion, CCC. So you must make sure that whatever that you design is compliant by law, so that towards the end are all the necessary paperwork that allows you to stay in your whatever, your house or your office or whatever, is okay, legally speaking, you know. So like I said, I have no problem with people who want to expand their knowledge. That's all fine. I have no issue with that. But it has to be done within the scope of the law, because that will make the person liable if there are any issues later on and responsible for whatever that has been done. And that's my concern, actually. Yeah. Okay.
That's my
so I'm sorry. No, I'm speaking from past experience, because we have done a lot of renovations for houses. You know, we see they're all illegally done, non-compliant. You know what happens? Sometimes the clients who buy the houses end up paying fines or compounds to the local council.
Yeah.
And even though they were not responsible for the mistake, the law says, no, it's a case of buyer beware. So in a situation like this, you have to be very, very careful. You want to get people who know how to do the job is one thing, but they must also be liable and accountable for their work. Thanks.
Yeah. With that, with you, Vishal. Okay, next question. As a graduate architect myself, I know that architecture is not only about designing spaces or buildings. What are other career paths within or this field or another field that you believe are worth pursuing?
That an architectural degree can help you with. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Just being flexible during this challenging times. Probably you can directly become an assistant architect per se. Probably you can branch out into something else.
No, I'm actually quite happy to say that I think the architectural degree really takes you to a lot of places. Even if you don't end up as an architect or as a building designer. It's like, you know, Vivian is saying, you know, environmental design, film set design. I think it's even possible to go into product design, furniture design, and of course, there's always teaching, which is probably the most rewarding if you choose for whatever reason not to pursue an architectural career. So I'm not really worried about that. In fact, I think an architectural degree is quite versatile in the sense that it does allow you to develop certain skills with your need to be creative. And there are a lot of good avenues out there for you to at least contemplate. And because the world is moving so rapidly right now, if something could just appear out of nowhere in about a year or two from now, that doesn't seem possible at the moment. But an architectural degree does help later on with things like that. So I'm not worried about that. I think versatility is something which an architectural degree does provide.
I would think that it's actually very beautiful how architecture has allowed me to go to so many things. My last job, when I was working in reforestation, I was doing project management to literally just manage a project on how to plant trees and also manage stakeholders. And I attribute it to my 10 years of experience in development and liaising in the development sector. And also in environmental sustainability design, like, GBI, BREEAM, LEED, these are the things that we cover. And these are what we call the new generation things that's coming into development. And it's rebuilding a system. When you are doing things like that, it's rebuilding a system, and it's very exciting, right? But it is also one of those things where it's very, for me, it's also understanding the law. Like, if you want to break the rules, you must know the rules beforehand. And I learned the rules beforehand. Then after that, you know how to play with the rules, break the rules, whatever it is. You can bend the rules however you want. I'm not saying to tell you break the law, but I'm just saying that you can now think out of the box to do something different.
You can bend the law. You don't break it. You can find a way to bend it.
Yeah.
Cleverly, yeah. Cleverly.
But let's not talk about laws here. But yeah. It's very important, because when you understand that you build your foundations in the company, and you know how things work, that's when you can fly higher. You can play, have fun, right? And while you're even learning the rules of the game, you are also having fun, and that's just the most important thing.
Like in my case, I take myself, I completed my part 1. And then after that, I entered doing construction, doing renovation. It's different. And people actually can venture into many other things, even they have architectural degree. For example, even landscaping. We learn all sorts of things in architecture. Many different things that we can actually master and branch out into. Furnitures, even plaster ceiling, things like that. Everything involves design.
Even you can go into video gaming, I understand now.
Oh yeah, exactly. Something totally new. Video, yeah. Well, I mean, not totally new, but like you said, something really interesting. Video environments, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry now, so there's always going to be room for design development.
Yes, correct. So,
and that one, you don't have to worry about law. You don't have to worry about practical things like gravity and physics. You can do whatever the hell you want. So it's quite cool.
Yeah, yes, just for the audience to know that if you take up architecture for your degree or for your studies, it doesn't mean that you have to be an architect. There's many other avenues for you to venture into, such as Vivian has done so much other things than doing just architecture, Deepan in construction, and even Vishal also teaching now. I mean,
I was teaching before the pandemic, so I have to wait for that to get back to normal before I can go back full swing in that. I really quite miss it, actually.
Yeah. Okay, my last question before we head into the Q&A. Would you guys okay with going through the process of being where you are now? Because I think individually everybody has a different place they are at the moment. Probably you can share with the audience how you get to where you are now.
You mean our professional career?
Sorry?
In our professional career?
Yes, correct.
Okay, well, I graduated back when I was 24, 25, around that time. 23, 24 lah, lebih kurang. For a while, I wasn't really sure what to do with my life. So I was actually doing a lot of things. I was actually involved in advertising for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Because you know, English is relatively proficient in my case. So I was a copywriter, but I have to admit, I didn't quite enjoy it. At the time, I was actually freelancing quite a bit. And then eventually I ended up working with a firm. And because in architecture, we have 2 degrees, part 1 and part 2, I only completed my part 2 a few years ago. So before that, I was just working with a few architects here and there. So it's not really a very, very crazy story or anything. That was pretty much a straightforward one.
Next, Vivian.
Yeah, so just in December, I stopped being a project development consultant for reforestation. I'm now a life missions consultant. And basically, I serve the international market, mostly the US market, in how to architect their new reality. So you can see that it's not even going into solid now, it's actually going into something heavy on personal development, like aligning themselves with their life missions in this lifetime. That's what I do right now. And a few of the clients I have, so it goes from people who are building self-sustained communities to reimagining and recreating the functionings of a whole city as a political leader, restructuring and returning finance and information to the world through decentralization, transcending technological innovations and changing the faces of sciences with alternative senses. And also on the art side, transitioning societies with powerful messages and very powerful music. And also for some of them, it's just to be a very powerful inspiration to the world. So these are some of the people that I help in when I'm helping to game changing, when I'm helping game changers. So this is what I do right now.
Vivian, I understand you previously studied in Panellists, correct?
Yes, I did.
Then you continued studies in Australia.
Yes, Deakin University, I got like a partial scholarship to go there.
Oh, okay. So when you came back to practice, was it hard for you to gauge into the local architecture ecosystem, or is it more or less it will be the same?
I would say that it's very difficult. I think because what happened was I went back to university in 2014. And I went there for 3 things. I was running an organization for the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Muhammad Yunus. That's one thing. And I was the hub coordinator for Australia at that time. And I was doing my final architecture degree. At the same time, I was doing space technology studies within my architecture degree. And then I was, after my degree from Australia, I was flown to Ireland to give a speech in One Young World Summit. And then I was also top 100 scholars in the world for Web Summit. So imagine if you go so high and you come back and then you're like, oh no, what am I gonna do here? It was not easy, but I think it brought me to a place where I wanted to carry on this innovative spirit. I wanted to carry on this change the world spirit. I brought this spirit back. And what I did was I worked as a environmental sustainable designer, where what I do every day was to like bring sustainability, bring innovation into the development industry. And I'm going to say that it's not easy. You know why? Because you're sitting around the boardroom table and you have 10 other people who's like, I've been in this for 30, 40 years. Who are you to tell me how I can be better at how I do my work, right? and going into there and having a learning curve which is like that, very steep, is actually really difficult. Because if you were an architect and then you needed to understand engineering, you need to understand environments at that point, very heavily on engineering, it's actually not easy. So, but I would say that it's very dependent on the person, how they would take every challenge and how they would take every opportunity at its stride. You can either be broken or you can break into something beautiful. So yeah.
That's very aspiring. How about you, Deepan? How do you get yourself into being a CEO of your own company?
Okay, so basically I completed my studies when I was 24 years old. And after I completed, I worked for architectural firm, like what I said, PCL architect. After I moved out of there, I started doing many things actually. I couldn't find a perfect job that I wanted. So I ended up in a call center. I started doing Grab car and things like that. I used to work for an event company. And until I met this client that they wanted to do curtains, they just messaged and asked, you got any contact to do curtains or not? And I had this one particular person who can supply cheap curtains to me. So that is where I started my career actually. I had a deal with this person and I started taking a huge amount of curtain supplies from them and started doing curtains and all that. And slowly I moved into doing construction, renovation. And yeah, that's how I became a contractor eventually.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, we just in time for the Q&A session, just by
Sure.
shy of 3 minutes. Okay, I'll just read out the questions. I'll say your names if it's directed to any one of you. So first of all, from the chat box, what software would you recommend using for learning 3D sculpting?
Well, I mean, the next big thing, of course, will be Revit. So as much as you can, I suppose it's difficult to learn in the beginning, but as much as you can, focus on Revit, because that is definitely where the industry is going. It will take some time, no doubt, for everyone to adopt it, but that is the direction that we are going. Yeah. And of course, SketchUp, which I'm sure most of you already know. There are other softwares like 3D Studio Max and all that, but I guess you don't have to focus on every one of them. Just focus on one or two and that should be enough for you.
Would you recommend SPM leavers to try it out before pursuing for architect for the degree?
Definitely.
To try what out? The software?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess the SketchUp is pretty easy to pick up, so should be okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is for Deepan. How did you decide to move away from working under someone to working for yourself and owning your own construction company? Also, what are some of the benefits of working as your own boss and what can be some of the challenges?
Okay, what is the benefits of working by myself? Okay, I make the decisions all by myself. Basically, that is the answer. Yeah, I make all the decisions and then I suggest to the client what I feel like suggesting. Okay, this is what I feel your house will look nice at. Okay, why don't you just do this? I don't have to consult with anyone or anything. It's just between me and the client. So it's basically I can deliver my entire idea to the client. So this is one advantage that I feel about it. And for me to move out from working under someone and to be doing my own, my own stuff, I would say I didn't really enjoy doing drafting. Like what I said just now, as soon as we leave our uni, when we are a part 1 graduate, we'll be doing mostly drafting work. So I didn't really enjoy that and I couldn't take the stress, to be very frank here. So I ended up doing this. That's how I diverted myself.
Okay. So the next question for Vishal. We see you have a bunch of paintings behind you. Is that your hobby? Do you paint? Is painting and architecture intertwined in any way? Is this like
okay? Okay, number one, those are not my paintings. Those are from other places. But I do paint, and I'm very happy to say that one of my pieces recently got sold. So I'm going to show you that piece shortly. In fact, just give me a minute. Just give me a minute.
Sure.
Okay, sorry for that. So yeah, I do paint. This was one piece that I did recently. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's something that I started out just for fun last year, doing something called the Ramadan Sketch Challenge, but it actually went to other things as well. And I've been getting offers for some of the work that I did. So this one was sold recently, which I was quite happy with. Okay. Now, the thing about painting is that it allows you to be creative, because most of us architects, when we start off doing design, we like to draw. But somewhere along the line, we tend to lose that skill or that interest or that patience. And what happens is that the computer starts taking over, and then we forget how to do simple lines, we forget how to do simple perspectives and things like that, which is actually a shame. So painting is important, yes, because it allows you to sharpen whatever skills you may already have and then improve on them later on. But it is also an expression for creativity that you don't really find in obviously technical drawings. So I would recommend everyone to sketch or paint or draw or do anything of that nature that doesn't require the computer.
Yeah.
Simply because it's an expression of design and creativity, but of course you get better with it over time. Yeah. So yeah, it's important in that sense. Don't lose your love for drawing.
That's very true. But
Yeah.
Vishal, I did go into a website that you actually displayed all your paintings before, but it's not for sale. So how do you get to know the paintings that you actually sell?
No, sorry. I mean, did I WhatsApp my drawings?
No. I mean, prior to this talk, I actually Googled all the speakers. So it led to one website of that you display all your paintings.
Well, they're sold as prints.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, because that's the thing. When I started doing all this, people actually asked me to buy the originals, but I told them a lot of them was in just A3 or A4. The painting thing actually is not something that I took very seriously until about a year and a half ago. And then when I started sketching, I started painting and all that, just for the fun of it, I put it up on Facebook. But people actually started messaging me and said that they wanted me to, they will consider buying the piece if it was for sale. But I'll be honest, these are all paintings which are very close to my heart. They're like my babies, so I don't want to sell them. But I can do prints. So prints, no problem. So I'll show you again just a little bit. Hold on. Sorry, I'll just quickly go through. So for instance, drawings like this. These are all just A4 sketches. Or drawings like this. So they're all just A4 or things like this. So these are things which I did starting only for fun only. It just became a little bit more serious over time because offers started coming in.
Audience in the chat box
Okay.
are asking how much are you taking for the paintings?
How much? That depends on the painting and the size. If it's a printing, go as much as 500 to 1,000, which I am a bit surprised, but people are willing to pay. This one particular piece especially was quite popular. Sorry, I'm not marketing myself. I'm just showing because you guys are asking.
It's okay. It's part of the question.
Okay. All right. This piece here, this one here, it was quite popular. I had quite a few offers for that. And this piece as well was also quite popular. This one on the left. So yeah, if you're keen to try, my suggestion is just give it a shot. Do some nice sketches, open up a Facebook page, and then share it out with people. And they are keen, they just message you directly. Okay. But it started off for fun. It was never meant to be a commercial thing. It just really started off for fun.
Probably someone could go directly to Vishal to inquire for any inquiries. Okay, next question.
Sure. Why not? Yeah.
What are the subjects we should focus on in school if we are interested in pursuing architecture?
Studio.
You want to take this?
Is one of the most. Sorry.
You want to answer this?
Yeah, sure. I feel studio is one of the most important and the toughest subject where you'll need to have full commitment on. That is the particular subject you'll be sitting down. You'll have a lot of crit sessions. You'll need to meet the lecturer very often to finalize your idea, to fix your design and things like that. So I feel studio is one of the main subjects we should actually focus on.
I think they're talking about school. I mean, secondary school.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
sorry.
menengah,
Secondary school.
sekolah rendah, I think. I
I
don't
was
think they
thinking,
mean
okay,
architecture school.
right.
Yeah.
Secondary school, I mean, okay, like people would say you must know how to draw and all that. Like Mr. Vishal, you're good at drawing. I can't even draw a
fun.
straight line actually. Yeah, I can't even draw a straight line actually. I'm a person like that. I only can do rough sketches on butter paper and all that. So if you ask me in school, maths is important. We definitely have a lot of calculation. Maths is definitely important.
I kind of, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I think more importantly is that we are well-rounded in whatever that you're studying, because when you are servicing as an architect, you're servicing the community. So understanding the people around you and the point of perspectives they're coming from is very important. So just be very well-rounded about it and have lots of fun. On a side note, there is such thing as a drafting subject in university, in school, if you are interested in. I'm not sure if they still offer things like that, but it's part of the SPM. You can actually take that subject for SPM actually. So yeah.
Well, my personal feeling is that you should really focus is English. If you want to be a good architect, you really need to make sure that your English is as fluent as possible, because that is the language that allows you to really build your designs and get them across an international audience. And so much of application in design is international, of course, is in English. The more you study all that, the better you start thinking and bringing it into your own design later on, either as a student or as someone when you start working. Other than, of course, art, I think honestly, English is the one that you really need to focus on. Now, math, I was always told from day one it was very important. And don't get me wrong, it is. But in architecture, at least when I was studying, I didn't feel it was, I wouldn't say not important lah. Of course, there's a role that it plays, but I kind of felt that it was not as emphasized as I expected it to be, you know? And to be honest, sometimes we just tell the engineers to worry about all that lah, even though we should be a bit more responsible lah. I'm just being honest. But I believe that if you really can sell your ideas, and the only way for you to really expand your knowledge, and you got to learn English. Not just because it's something that you want to convey your own ideas in, but because all the publications that allow you to be a good designer, to develop critical thinking skills, to understand that something may be good on the outside, but there are certain things which are not too good when you actually start looking at it proper. These are all done in English. So you really need to focus on that too.
I think what Deepan was trying to say earlier about maths being important, especially Deepan being the head of his own company, I think that's quite important. You need to know
Actually, I deal with a lot of maths.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I mean, I know it is important, don't get me wrong, but somehow it's not a major issue for me. Right? I'm just being honest. I mean, when you go to, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Next question is to Vivian. What is the environmental sustainable designer, and what do you do? You've briefly explained earlier, but maybe you can go more into detail.
Basically, you're looking the building as an organism. It's like you're a building doctor, or you are a township doctor, right? You look at how a building is functioning, and then you look at how you can optimize it. You look at how a township is working, and then you learn how to optimize the township. And oftentimes, a lot of this is very heavy on M&E, yes. But there is also manners of how you can position your building or create your building in a way whereby it's energy sustainable, and also how you bring the environment into the building as well. So this is what I do in a nutshell. Because I'm being a building doctor.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Another branch of something you can go if you graduate from architecture itself. Okay, very light question. What's your favorite building in Malaysia? This is for all the speakers.
Masjid Negara. Masjid Negara.
Sorry?
Masjid Negara.
Masjid Negara.
I absolutely love and adore that building. Absolutely love and adore it. That for me is a no-brainer, that one.
How about you, Vivian?
It's like I like this really. It's a house, and its balcony is just full of plants, and it's been featured in a lot of books. I think tropical houses of Malaysia or whatever. It's always on the cover. But it's a house in Bangsa, and if you pass by it, the whole facade of it just has lots of plants coming out of it. So yeah.
The planter box house.
Huh? Sorry?
The planter box house.
Yeah, the planter box house. That one is
Yeah.
that's like one of my favorite buildings.
My favorite building is in Stapa. It's a house also. This particular house, the facade, the most interesting part is they made everything out of wood and brought it the very old school kind of a design with a lot of plants, vertical garden and all that. I can't remember exactly where, but it's a house in Stapa. Yeah. It's an intermediate house. That's my favorite building.
Okay. Next question. What's the difference in architecture working in Malaysia and overseas? Is there a need to take papers to go overseas, or is a degree from Malaysia relatively known across the world? What does part 1 and part 2 encompass?
No, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question because I've never worked overseas. So to be fair, I have no proper comparison.
Okay, fair enough.
So I studied overseas. So basically, it's to make sure that your universities are recognized by the lembaga, whether it's recognized by lembaga, that's one thing. And your part 1 is usually your degree, and your part 2 is your master's, and your part 3 is your license certification. So if you study in the US, where it's not recognized, you will have to do your part 1 and part 2 in Malaysia, and also your part 3. If you are studying in a university which is recognized, like UK or Australia, some of the universities, right? And so usually they'll be saying like, okay, the part 1 and part 2 is covered by these universities. I think now, last time in the past, it used to be the case whereby we don't have the part 1 verifications for the private universities, but I think now it is already changed whereby the universities have that kind of part 1, part 2. So yeah, answer your question. And also difference in working in Malaysia and overseas. I've seen the architecture drawings from overseas because I studied overseas, and I would say that it's a lot more, it's less, the quality is different, because the quality you have in, let's say, Australia, because I studied in Australia, right? The how you produce drawings and how you think about drawings in Australia is very different from Malaysia, but the scale is very different. Usually overseas, the scale of buildings are smaller, but in Malaysia, the scale of buildings are bigger, right? So there's a thing. And sometimes people, when you are in Malaysia, you get to do a lot bigger projects, but in overseas, maybe you have to do really small portions of it, because when you get better at certain things, you will be stuck in that role. But I would say that a lot of people who work overseas that I know, it's a different journey. It's how you carve your journey. If you want to go overseas and experience, by all means. The technological aspects of building a building overseas is actually very impressive, because you are following the supplier's consultation very heavily in how you build a building. Whereas in Malaysia, we are doing everything from scratch, which is very, very tiresome. Even like the walls and everything, they have their own suppliers there that can supply it for you properly and how to do it properly for you. Very easy. But here it's like you have to build a wall and everything like that. So it's very different.
Sorry, in regards to qualification for part 1 and part 2, you have to make sure with lembaga which are the schools which are recognized. Because I'm not sure about this. I think a few years ago, a lot of them were reevaluated. Now, the thing is, let's say if you did study overseas in an unrecognized school, for instance, the US, you come back, you show lembaga all your portfolio, whatever you studied part 1, part 2. And if lembaga feels that it's okay, they will allow you to proceed to get your part 3 later on if you want to, okay? If not, you have to sit for something called a test lah. There is like a test that you have to sit for. It's like a 3-month assignment. I can't remember what it's called right now, but if you get through that, then you're also considered okay. They allow you to register as a part 2 in Malaysia. But this has happened a few years ago, so I think there may have been some changes. So the students will definitely have to check with Embarker to see whether there are any changes since then.
Just for the audience to understand, when we refer Lembaga, we actually
Lembaga
referring
Arkitek Malaysia.
to Lembaga Arkitek Malaysia, LAM.
Yeah.
That's where the
LAM,
LAM part 2 comes from.
Yeah, part 1 and part 2, that's right. Bachelor of Applied Science and Bachelor of Architecture. Also, in some cases, equivalent to a master's.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Okay, for Deepan is quite popular in the chat box. What is your advice to those who wish to venture into entrepreneurship in the architecture construction industry?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
What is your advice to those who wish to venture into an entrepreneurship in the architecture or construction industry?
It's a dangerous game, man.
Yeah. For me, I would say everything was very smooth. Like things fall in place actually. Things actually really fall in place. I didn't really, I mean, the struggle was there, but for you to master that and get into this is a bit hard actually. It's two different things, it's really two different things. If you can really adapt with it, then it's okay. Or else it's going to be tough. Yeah.
All right. Okay, going to next question. So for Deepan, but I think this can go to with the other speakers as well. Can you care to share what you didn't like about your internship?
I didn't like about my internship. Okay, basically internship when I went there, it's normal. I believe it's normal. When you first go there as a fresh grad, they will ask you to do all sorts of work besides your thing that you're supposed to do. I actually mixed coffee for my staffs there. I used to sweep the office and things like that. So I was brought to this kind of things. I'm more interested in working on site and going to site, doing works at site, not just drafting. And I was given actually to do a door and window schedule for the past 4 months. Like I was literally just working on a door and window schedule and a bit of fine details and all that. So this is one thing that I really had a bad experience during my internship.
Okay. How about you, Vishal or Vivian? Any this in your internship previously?
Well, between my part 1 and my part 2, like actually more or less like Deepan also. It's just a lot of dry technical things that you have to keep on practicing and keep on persevering to learn. That's about it. At the end of the day, it's just something you have to do. But once it's done, and then you can just move on to bigger things.
I started my internship like fixing the photocopy machine and filing. I did a lot of filing. Like I was working in a company that was like, I was in this department where I just did contracts and commercials and I was doing filing every day. So yeah, but within filing, I was reading as well. I was reading all the documents as well. So it's not without loss. Like once you understand how you read the documents, that's when you start to understand how things work in the industry. Because you are the one in the end of the day who's going to approve those documents.
True.
So no matter what, you have to read them anyway. So starting off with all this kind of legwork is actually for you to understand an overview of how things work. So yeah.
Okay. Let me just go through. I think some of the questions have been answered previously in our talk. So let's go to the last question, which is the last one for our Q&A session. Does the university you attend affect your architecture career?
I'm only going to speak for myself. I really enjoyed studying architecture, but I also think what was very good, especially in my especially during my part 2 and my final year and my part 1 in Kotlin last time, was the lecturers, to be honest with you, because I really was very lucky that I had good lecturers. And they were the ones they really made architecture seem much more exciting than it used to be for me. And it sort of like gave me the drive to learn as much as I could, to see how exciting the design work can be. So the final 1 year of my part 1 in Kotlin last time was probably the best year that I had in my life in terms of my college career. And then when I did my part 2 a few years ago, when I was already about 34, 35 years old, I did my part 2 and I got it in when I was 36, 37. At that time, because I was already, I would like to think as a pelajar matang, mature student, I really enjoyed rediscovering all the things which I previously had learned, but I forgot. So the university experience is one thing, but if you get good lecturers and all that, they really do make the experience very enjoyable. And they do tend to encourage you to do better than you actually can. So I was lucky in that sense.
I come from 2 universities, one from Taylor's, which is in Malaysia, and the other one was from Deakin, Australia. When you are choosing a university such as like Deakin University or other parts of universities in Australia and UK, or even Malaysia, each university is focusing on a different way of teaching you. If you will go to Melbourne University, they'll teach you in a very conceptual way. If you went to somewhere like Deakin University, they'll teach you in a very technical way. If you went to, let's say, Tasmania, they might teach you in a very environmental way. So each university does have its own focus. If you really look into it, that's one thing. Secondly is professors. If you're in a university that is based upon, that has a research faculty, it means that its professors are PhD level when they're teaching you. Because if you are studying in a university that does not have a research faculty, it means that the professors are not PhD level. And what I'm saying is that when you're studying something more intense in the future, someone who has a lot more understanding on that sector of their teaching has been very beneficial to me, because I walked in and I wanted something more. So that's the difference. It's how much you want it. If you really want something more, you can always go for something more. You know, even in Malaysia, the teachers in how the different universities, they all have their own specific directions as well, and the teachers as well, they all are very specific in certain things. So for example, if you went to Taylor's, who might not have a research faculty, so then you have less PhD level of teachings. But I would say that when you have a PhD level of teachings, the content of the syllabus will become a little bit more richer and a little bit more advanced. And when you're looking at yourself as a more advanced level, the people around you starts to become more advanced. And when you're in the architecture program, the people around you that surrounds you are the one that's going to push you to become more and more qualitative on how you're producing your work as well. So I would say that in some ways it does matter. Like if you understand AA, Architecture Association, then actually when you go to AA, you're not learning architecture, you're learning how to think, right? And so then you will think that, oh, I went here and I'm not learning anything about drafting or building a building or whatever. I'm learning how to think, right? So you have to be, if you are choosing a university, see where your own joy and where your own skills want to flourish, in which way possible. Because each university will help you to grow your own skills and grow your own joys in that way. So yeah.
For me, I would say to create a good relationship with the lecturers, because in my situation, every now and then I really needed help. Like I'll be like, sir, I stuck here, I'm stuck with this, I'm stuck with that. Even at 12 a.m. also they will have the time to reply me and get things sorted out. That is very important actually. And also the facilities in the university. People are also like shortage of drafting tables and things like that. So yeah.
If I just may I add on, also with local universities, when Vivian said about the ones in Australia have different school of thoughts, I would say. So same goes with Malaysia. Each university has different school of thought. So yes, it does affect your career in terms of where you want to go into. Okay, because I think we have room for one more last question, which I think this came in. What is the salary like for a fresh graduate, and what is the progression like afterwards?
It depends on the firm.
Yeah.
It depends, but maybe about 2 to 2.5, maybe that range. I mean, if you're only part one, it's probably less than that. But I think 2 to 2.5 more or less is maybe 2.2 to 2.8. You know, that range, depending on the firm itself. It's not really. There's no really 1% one figure.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's depending on your certification as well. The
true.
levels of certification is actually how much they're going to pay you, actually. But once you're in the game, you can always see how everything works and see how the opportunity comes for you to upgrade yourself.
Myself, I don't have any working experience from a firm. So the only thing I can remember is my internship, and I was a free intern. They didn't give me any allowance. And there was also fresh graduates that come in, and I remember they were paid around 2,000, 1,009 to 2,000. Part one.
Yeah, usually it's about that much, that range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are now approaching the end of the program, and to me the discussion was really an eye-opener, and I hope everyone was able to take a note or two for the whole hour of discussion. Before we end, actually, I would like to invite our speakers to give a closing remark and a final key takeaway for everyone joining this webinar. Probably I can give about 2 to 3 minutes each. Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess.
Vishal, you want to start first?
Okay. I think if you generally have an interest in architecture at this stage, I think you should just do as much reading as possible. You know, and in fact, there's so many good videos on YouTube as well right now to tell you what modern architecture is all about, what interesting developments are happening in the world of design. If you really feel interested in stuff like that, then I think you should give a lot of time to read or look at videos or pick up groups on Facebook which talk about architecture, and then really decide if that's what you want to do with your life. You know, not to discourage you or anything, but because architecture is a lifelong commitment, so you really need to be very sure that's what you want to do. You know, and perhaps if you have friends who are already involved in design, or maybe, you know, your friends' parents are already architects or interior designers of that nature, maybe you talk to them and say, okay, look, I like to be an architect. Maybe we can work out something where I work free for the next few months just to get a sense of what is it that I can expect if I decided to go into this full time. Because if, you know, you're just a student, you're just leaving school, then at that point, don't worry so much about the money. Just make sure you know what you want to do with your life before you actually do it. Because the money part can come later. Just make sure they have no regrets. So that's my advice to you.
Yeah, I just want you to have a lot of fun with architecture, because you're going to be very tired when you're doing architecture. But as long as you're having fun, as long as you're having joy with it, that's the most important thing. And when you're speaking about architecture with your friends who are also architects, you will talk about architecture for like 5 hours and it feels like nothing, because that is how much passion people have about architecture when they're really into it. So yeah, just have a lot of fun. And in your journey, when you don't feel like it feels right, just you can always try another opportunity or route. Is versatile enough. So yeah.
to know actually what you want to do. Get into the campus already. Start talking with a lot of people before you start architecture. Actually, ask them and get to know what is it like. And if you ask me, architecture is purely fun. If you really know how to enjoy it, it's really fun. You get to do what you want. And it's something very mind-blowing. Architecture is amazing.
I guess so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that concludes our session. It was a very insightful hour with Vishal, Vivian, and Deepan. With this, I think I would like to personally thank the speakers for their input. I'm honored to be able to moderate the session and would like to apologize if there's any troubles or mistakes throughout the session. So it's me, Zafri, Vishal, Vivian, and Deepan, BIMBING, Team Harin and Simran. We are signing off for this session. Thank you, everybody, for the engaging questions and comments. With that, I thank you, everybody, and Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. See you guys.